Welcome back to the Betoota Talks, our weekly Betoota podcast, the interview format. You're joined by myself, Clancy Overall, and Wendell Hussey. And today's guest is, I guess you'd say, a topical one in many ways. We've got, we're around the corner from finals football in the winter codes, both NRL and AFL. And as a lot of the listeners might know, we're probably a bit inept on talking about Aussie rules.
We get accused of having an East Coast rugby league bias, and I think that's fair. And we don't often apologise for it, but we do have a treat for our southern, our western, our northern, and obviously listeners of the sharing around the East Coast as well.
North Queensland has been a hotspot for Aussie rules footy as long as I can remember. There's a base everywhere, you know what I mean? It's not just the Ron Barassi line is no more. But today's guest is definitely going to help us with our, I guess you'd say, not blissful, but our ignorance.
Yeah, give us a rundown and tell us some of the yarns from the life and times. Carolyn Wilson, Caro, thanks very much for stopping in.
Thanks, Wendell. Hello, Clancy. Thanks for having me. I'm horrified that I'm the first Aussie Rules journo you've ever had on the show.
Yeah, Brandon Jack the other day. Yeah. We had Dylan
he's
Buckley.
A writer.
Yeah, we had writers,
but journo.
Yeah, we haven't had a proper AFL journo, so it's very exciting for us. And at a great time of the year, 10 days away now, well, probably by the time this goes live, 8 or 9 days.
Bit more, yes, pre-finals bye.
There's the week
we have
off,
a pre-finals bye now.
So,
yep.
We've already made our first AFL stumble. Do you get particularly excited around this time of year?
Of course I do. It's been, to be brutal, a pretty ordinary season in many ways. There's been a few great games, but a lot of pretty ordinary games. And what has been so compelling is that there are really not, as we sit here today, there are 9 teams still in it. As of this time next week, there'll only be 8. And they're all so even. Adelaide was beginning to look like a firm favourite, but again, as we sit here today, they're unlikely to have one of their best players because of the alleged homophobic slur that he decided to go with last weekend against Collingwood. So to think that Adelaide will lose Isaac Rankin for probably the entire final series is just extraordinary to me.
And he is one of their best players, right?
One of their best 3.
Yeah.
There's a view that they can't win it without him. I don't share that. Brisbane is still my favourite. I still reckon Brisbane at their best are the best team in it, but Adelaide have been extraordinary, and this is a shattering blow for them.
Yeah, it's a rather dated scandal. You know what I mean? Like there were people were having these conversations 10 years ago, and you feel like it had been weeded out by then. But I guess in certain moments, some people
it's flared up a couple of times now in the AFL in the last couple of seasons.
This is the 5th in 2 seasons.
Yeah. Right.
It began at Gather Round last year in South Australia. Jeremy Finlayson used the F word against an Essendon opponent. He was suspended for 3 weeks. The next time a player did it, I think the next one was Will Powell of the Gold Coast. He got 5 weeks, and the AFL said, look, if you're that idiotic that you would do it after what happened to Finlayson. And since then there have been 2 more. The only one who didn't get 5 weeks was Jack Graham of West Coast, formerly the Tigers, who self-reported. Make it sound like a... And
I'm sorry I said a word out there. Is that how it went down?
He actually took about a week to realise that he'd said it, but he did fess up. That didn't happen, I understand, with Isaac Rankin. Right. And a few Collingwood players heard it. The guy he used, and it was the F word again, the guy he used it to, I'm told was probably happy not to go on with it or didn't mention it to officialdom, but other Collingwood players did. They weren't happy after that game. They'd had some pretty dodgy umpiring decisions. They lost by less than a kick. Yeah. They've lost 5 of their last 6 games, Collingwood, after looking clear competition leaders. I'm not saying that's why they did it. I mean, look, it's not good enough. Yeah. It's just it's so dumb. And I had an argument with a family member actually on the way here before I met you guys, and they were going, oh, it's just ridiculous. I mean, these guys have got to toughen up. And I'm like, well, they can't decide today to toughen up when 4 blokes have been suspended in the last 2 seasons just because he's one of the best players in the comp on the eve of the finals.
Yeah.
I have an issue, just to be serious for a minute, that we're so strong now on racial vilification. And I'm not here to be a cheerleader for AFL, but I'm told I need to be because you two poke a bit of fun at my beloved code.
Well, from time to time.
You do. You don't respect us. I'm here to say they've been a leader in many areas, and one of them is racial vilification.
On field.
On field.
Yeah.
They've struggled definitely with they've struggled with many issues to do with Indigenous Australians, but there is, and they're losing them at the rate of knots. Like the numbers are falling, which is a worry. So anyway, that's another story. But it just annoys me that you can't make a homophobic comment or a racial comment, but you can shame someone's female partner or daughter or sister or mother, and that might lead to a player will lose his temper and belt you, and he might get a free kick paid against him. But the AFL don't seem to act on that.
That's an interesting point. I've never thought of that. It's like the certain paradigms of what is inappropriate and what is offensive.
Exactly. And obviously the AFL are really trying at the moment to show, well, they are putting themselves up as a pillar of inclusion, largely where gender is concerned, and they're pushing the AFLW. And then they get Snoop Dogg to perform at the grand final, who, Andrew Dillon, the boss of the AFL, says the lyrics are going to be family friendly. But, gee, some of those lyrics don't really stand the test of time, do they, Wendell?
Some of his bigger hits, yes.
Not quite as family friendly as Katy Perry, which last year I thought was magnificent. I very much enjoyed that.
I want to argue against Caro's theory that we don't respect AFL because
Victorian leg tennis.
Well, aerial ping pong. But
touche.
In Queensland, since the three-peat, it's kind of been ingrained, I guess they got their colours right. That's all they needed to do, the Lions.
Maroon?
They have enough maroon on that jersey and they'll have you.
Queensland's extraordinary what they've done, and this Olympics deal with the new stadium is obviously going to get Brisbane going from strength to strength, but they're going to overtake South Australia, Queensland, in a few years in terms of participation numbers of Aussie rules, AFL, and we're talking about, one of the heartland states. Much bigger battle where we're sitting today in Sydney and certainly across New South Wales and the west of Sydney, but Queensland and, Gold Coast will almost certainly make finals now. I don't see how they can stuff it up from here. So 2 Queensland teams.
Yeah.
For the first time.
The Gold Coast Suns have done what the Gold Coast Titans haven't been able to do, which is kind of ingratiate themselves with the new families that are emerging on the Gold Coast. Because the thing about the Gold Coast for many years was no one really lives there for a long. They either retire there or they live there in their 20s. Now we've got this, it's grown into a city, so there's families and there's kids growing up there.
Well, anecdotally,
the Suns have got those kids.
Yeah, you hear stories about kids being picked up from primary school on a bus that was working with the AFL or the Suns, taking a training, get a couple of hours of training, get a bag, some balls, etc., and then drop back off after that. Like they're just winning so many of those young grassroots numbers, and it's such a family-friendly game up there now.
Yeah.
Which you can't see that happening with rugby league and rugby union, I don't think.
Well, I just, now I'm not going to bag NRL because I think they've done an incredible job. Certainly, I think the CEO of GWS, Dave Matthews, says that NRL's now bigger in the west of Sydney than it was when the Giants started. So that's a black mark for the AFL. Gillan McLachlan was a great boss, but I'm not sure he ever really got his head around the battle to win the hearts and minds of Western Sydney. They've got this wonderful boutique club, the Sydney Swans, who have a great culture and everyone admires, and they've been unbelievable. But I'm not sure what they're going to do about GWS, who have been a great club. Some say they should have won it by now, but they've been there about so many times. They've had good coaches, great players. But I don't know what they're going to do about anyway. But getting back to the NRL, I love the way everyone says you've picked up NRL State of Origin and basically made it huge and stolen our idea, and we've lost it. Your NRLW, some NRLW State of Origin games now outrate AFL games on a Thursday night. So badge of honour. But don't say we copied Magic Round. I mean, that's just a bunch of blokes going up to Queensland, getting on it, and watching. You don't even change venues, is that right? It's all at the one venue.
Yeah, it's all one oval, just destroying it, just getting it muddier and muddier, over the weekend.
That's great. That's fabulous. Good on you. But Gather Round is completely different.
It's a much better name. I'll have to say.
Not a whole lot of Shiraz getting around at Magic Round up in Brisbane either.
Well,
Barossa Valley produce.
Winery regions nearby.
But I mean, there's games in the Barossa. There's games at Norwood. Yeah. The Adelaide Oval is just a. Have you been to the Adelaide Oval?
Nah.
Oh, you've got to get there.
But I actually would love to go to Gather Round. It looks like a lot of fun, and I like that they take it to different venues all around the region.
It's like being at a really brilliant writers' festival or film festival. And if you're into writing, you're running into great authors on the street and in the local bar or coffee shop. You go for a walk in the morning and you run into Sam Mitchell, the Hawthorn coach, going on his daily walk, or you're running into players, and as one mob move out, another one moves in. It's just it's absolutely brilliant.
A bit like the Olympics in many ways, I guess.
It's a bit, yeah.
You got different stadiums
just
hosting
a bit shorter.
Things. Yeah. Now, we want to talk about we're talking about the changing landscape in Australian sport, but you were on the front line of the changing sports media landscape. I want to ask, how do you, as a young woman, decide on and make a reality your dream to do what you do now?
Look, to be honest, Clancy, it wasn't my dream.
Yeah.
My dream was I wanted to be a journalist from pretty much the start of senior school. But I was really into movies, ultimately wanted to be a script writer, certainly loved the idea of being a film critic or some form of writing along those lines. And it was only so I didn't get a job as a cadet, but I got a job as a copy girl, which they don't have anymore. You have to go to uni now. You have to be have been admitted to the bar before you can get a journalism traineeship.
Professionalised it a bit.
I was literally straight out of year 12, got a job as a copy girl, and after a year became a cadet. And it was towards the end of my cadetship that one of my best friends who I'd met through journalism, she'd done a year on the hustings for The Age as covering footy.
Yeah, right.
And, had been barred from some dressing rooms and caused a bit of a stir, and loved it, didn't want to make it a permanent job, did it for a year. And she kept saying to me, you should do this, you'd love it. And I was a big footy fan. My father was the president then of the Richmond Football Club. That was a very successful club back in the day, has become so again, took a while. But and so she spoke to my sports editor and said, you should get a woman into I was at the old Melbourne Herald, now the Herald Sun. Anyway, the rest is history, I guess. I loved it.
Were you the first in the Aussie Rules locker room?
The first to do it full time.
Yeah.
So my friend Corrie Perkin, who funnily enough I now do a podcast with and have for quite a while, she did it for a year, but I sort of kept going.
What were some of the things you ran into in those first couple of years? Being let into locker rooms?
Do they get a bit bashful?
Yeah.
The young gents?
Well, my father's club barred me from the rooms. So some clubs didn't let women in the rooms, and one of them was Richmond, which was pretty ironic. Look, I mean, if people didn't agree with my votes, we'd get letters. I was accused of, giving the votes to good-looking blokes.
Yeah, right.
Because they were good-looking or I liked their beards or something. Asked to leave the rooms because the Carlton president said, look, I'm sorry, I just assumed you were a groupie. I didn't know what you were doing in there.
Mr. Elliott?
No, his name was Ian Rice, previous to John Elliott.
Sounds like something John Elliott could also say.
Yeah, no, probably, true. Good point. And look, famously, it's now called the Australian Football Media Awards, and it's quite a august function every year. But back then, it was called the Footy Writers' Dinner, and it was held at Princes Park, the home of the Carlton Footy Club. And I was asked to go along, and no woman had ever been.
Right.
And I arrived, and someone said, "Oh, hello," and no kidding, led me to the kitchen and went to get me an apron because they assumed I was part of the catering team.
The sous chefs here.
But look, it was scary. I mean, I wrote stories that upset people, and one coach said, "You know why that bloke got a black eye because we ran a photo of a guy with a black eye and the other guy was going to the tribunal, so that was a no-no. And the coach of Hawthorn at the time, Alan Jeans, famous premiership coach, took me down to the rooms and said, I'm going to show you Kelvin Moore's big black balls. That's why the other bloke got the black eye. And poor Kelvin Moore, I don't think he wanted me to see his black anatomy, and luckily someone intervened and stopped him. But yeah, there was.
We're going to show you.
How did the players go about it? I know, sometimes they can be quite hostile to journalists, as we saw with Jack Ginnivan a couple of weeks ago, walking to the airport. I think in Adelaide it was, where he was.
It was a different time, Wendell. I started in the early '80s, so there were no mobile phones.
Yeah.
There were no laptops, no computers. They came in probably a few years later. Stories were written on carbon, paper with carbon in between. Mostly while you were smoking in the office. And you had to get people either before they left home or after they got to the office. And, I was an afternoon paper, which there isn't one anymore. So there was this deadline. So you didn't ring – there were no media managers. So it was a more
you
of
had to get onto the coach. Get onto someone in the team.
Coach, players.
Yeah, right.
We now call them CEOs, but then they were called general managers, footy bosses, and you built relationships in a much better way because there was no screen. I mean, there were players who got annoyed by stories that were written and journos who got barred, and I was young, so I was in my early 20s, so I was the same age as the players. So, I got to know them, and I didn't go out clubbing with them like some of the male journos did, but I certainly got to know them and went out with them, and I felt uncomfortable socialising with them. But I do remember covering an Aussie Rules footy tour of Ireland when I was living in London, and I was seconded to cover this Gaelic footy tour, and I was on the bus there was only one other journo and all the players, and I know one elderly official got really upset by some of the language and the filthy humour, and I mean, looking back, it just would not have been allowed now. But I think I was treated as a bit of an equal.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So it's different.
Did you have to kind of prove your mettle a little bit? Were they kind of like...
Was that where the dirty humour on the bus came in? Or?
I don't know whether they just didn't care that I was there. I remember the coach of that particular tour, I'm not sure, I think he's dead now. He, used to have friends that would sometimes come on the bus with him. So there would often be one other female.
Yeah.
And depending on whether you were in Cork or Galway, it was a different friend. And he'd ask me to sit with his friend, and other players would say, get the women off the bus. And I would just shoot them furious looks going, listen, I'm here because I'm meant to be here. Don't be lumping me in with her.
Yeah.
So, there was so many bizarre things that when you look now at the fact that a guy's about to get suspended for 5 weeks for a homophobic slur, I mean, it was a different time.
You heard a lot of them on that bus, I'm sure.
I certainly, much worse too.
I want to ask now, because, you've been at it since the 80s and I didn't even think then, media manager is a new kind of role in the scheme of things with Australian sport, club media managers, publicists, PR, that kind of stuff. But to think that a lot of this back in the day, a lot of the liaising with you would be a form of coaching, and it was a coach's responsibility to be able to work with the media too in many ways. And you see some of the great coaches are very good at that. In NRL, I would look at Ricky Stewart and Wayne Bennett as good examples of that, and I'm sure.
I can't believe what Wayne Bennett has got away with over the years. Some of the stuff he said at those press conferences, the way he's treated the media. My Lord. But
there's a little bit of a catch and kill and a little bit of a cat and mouse as well with some of these coaches.
Yeah.
I want to ask some of the tricks you've seen. I'd be interested, and you don't have to really say any names or any clubs, but would you say that you've felt at times that a coach is sacrificing a young man, like he's giving you something? Someone who's they're done with in the expendability kind of aspect of sport, because you do know, like we know that it happens with contracts. All right, get rid of him, he's done. Do you feel like they barter with their own?
They play the politics. I don't know. I know what you mean. I mean, the thing you've got to remember about coaches, they're talking to their players when they do those press conferences.
Yeah.
And they might, look, some coaches absolutely loathe me, and some I think I have a pretty good relationship with. And the ones I have a good relationship with, I can ring every few weeks and they'll be fairly honest, and I'll keep some of their secrets, and they'll be honest about their players. But other times I reckon you have to take one for the team yourself.
Yeah.
So there's a player, say Bailey Smith, for example, at Geelong, who's clearly, you know, got some off-field issues, but has held it together brilliantly this year most of the time.
Yeah.
And is, you know, at the moment, I mean, he could poll really well in the Brownlow and will certainly, you know, be a big player in September. But I know that earlier in the year, a couple of times, a few of his teammates just found it all a bit of a distraction and a bit frustrating, and I said as much. Well, Chris Scott, who I do have a good relationship with, came down on me like a ton of bricks when he came on our show, The Agenda Setters, and just said it's just not true. They love him. They all love him. They couldn't be happier with him. Now, I'm sorry. I just know that that's not quite true. I know they love how good he's been on the field.
Yeah.
I also know there's been the odd frustration.
I mean, just as blokes, you can say he's the best looking guy in the competition. He gets all the girls. Don't tell me that the players don't have some sort of frustration.
Well, I don't think that's I actually don't think that's the reason, and I think you know that too, Clancy. But I mean, at that point, well, you can't give up your sources, and you can't sort of say, well, I happen to know that so and so and so and so. And I also know that Chris Scott, you know, it's a badge of honour for him. He's got this player who hadn't played the year before with a really bad injury. The year before that, he was sort of on the outer at the Western Bulldogs, obviously very frustrated with the coach and vice versa. So for him, you know, he's invested in this guy and he wants to tell him how much all his teammates love him. And look, they do to a large degree love him. But there are times that he can frustrate the hell out of them too.
He just needs to get off Instagram.
Yeah, it's funny about that.
Commenting on things. Who would you say would be the best coach to have dealt with and the worst coach to have dealt with over the years?
Oh, gee. I had a love-hate but mainly love relationship with Dennis Pagan, the North Melbourne Premiership coach. I just found him so entertaining.
Yeah.
But he'd bar me, you know, for 3 months and then we'd make up. And Mick Malthouse was difficult, really difficult, and just didn't understand and resented the role of the media. And as he went on, got more and more sensitive himself.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, could turn around and be pretty good. But we had issues, and he played for Richmond under my father's presidency, and, you know, there was a family connection, but that was tricky. Yeah. And I didn't like the way he, by shutting out the media, I don't think he really understood he was shutting out fans. I really have always got on really well with Chris Fagan.
Yeah.
And back to when he was a footy boss at Melbourne and manager of coaches at Hawthorn. He's just a great person to deal with. Thinking about the current ones, I've always had a great relationship with John Longmire.
Yeah.
Hasn't been great since the premiership, since the loss of the grand final, since the Brisbane premiership, because after he resigned, I sort of made the comment that there was really no other way it could go. I didn't see how you could come back from a loss like that. It was just such an abject catastrophe and failure on every level. And he thought that was a bit rough, and maybe I could have spoken to him. I don't see what I could have got from him. I mean, I think we'll be right again one day because he's such a good person, but that's a bit disappointing to me because I admire him so much. And he, you know, over the journey, he's been a brilliant coach. A very poor relationship with Luke Beveridge, who I think handles the media appallingly. And I think he would say the same about me. Doesn't like me at all.
He doesn't seem to like the media from what we can see.
He's got his few favourites, but I think he flies off the handle about things and rules that club in an unhealthily, I think he's got too much power, and I don't. But, you know, and again, as we sit here today, he may or may not make finals. But there is a view they should have done a lot better with the players they've got on that list, and I'd probably be one of those people who agrees with that. Scott brothers are great for the game.
Yep.
I mean, there are people who say they complain a lot, but they're always entertaining. They're erudite. They're not your average run-of-the-mill coach. Really sad to see Ken Hinckley go. Hope he comes back. I'm trying to think of ones back in the day. Probably, it's funny. I never had a great relationship with Tom Hafey, even though he had so much success at Richmond. I didn't have a bad relationship, but we never really got close. Sam Mitchell I love Sam Mitchell because he's one of the few champion players who's actually coaching.
Translated, yeah.
Most of them go into the media now because why would you want to coach?
Yeah.
They all end up pretty crazy.
Yeah.
So far, Sam's managed to stay pretty sane and handled himself really well and done an extraordinary job.
And seems like he's got those young guys who have some strong personalities humming pretty well in that team, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, a fan.
You mentioned there before how you'd get barred from covering a team, or they would block you out. How much has that changed over the last few decades? For example, I think you spoke a few weeks ago about the AFL having security guards brought in to look after coaches, and the AFL House didn't want that out in the media.
Good research, Wendell.
Yeah. How much do they lean on you, or do they go, if you report this story, well, then we will do X? Does that still happen, or is it?
I think, that story did not go down well. And we were completely bemused by that because you've got a big bloke who has got distinctive features, and he's been spotted with 3 AFL coaches, Michael Voss, Simon Goodwin no longer coaching, might coach again, and Luke Beveridge, 2 of whom had publicised threats against them, wearing the club colours. So we just thought that's a story, surely.
Yeah.
Unfortunately...
it's a funny one.
Unfortunately, it also turns out he has been a security guard for people at the very top of the AFL. So it went down very badly with some of those people at the very top of the AFL because now he can't do his job. But we're like, well, he's standing in the middle of Marvel Stadium. What did you think no one was going to notice?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, look, it's a genuine story. So there are certain stories you don't need to, like the name of the footballer Isaac Rankin used the homophobic slur against. Now, you don't need to name him because he's done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
So why should you? Why embarrass him?
Yeah.
But that was a genuine story, and I thought the carry on was ridiculous, particularly because the guy had been his photograph had appeared in the Herald Sun the day before we did our story. We just linked him to a few other security gigs. We thought it was really interesting.
Yeah.
People get very sensitive. I mean,
do they hammer you privately or publicly, or do they threaten kind of repercussions in terms of you'll be iced out in regards to certain stories? Or
some of them make threats. I mean, I work with Kane Corns, and I think earlier this year North Melbourne held that ridiculous press conference where they just said we're not going to let him into the rooms. Now, I thought that was poor, and I think that was a mistake. I mean, yes, you can get annoyed at someone and let them know. I just don't understand it. Usually people just dust themselves off and you're back on board the next day, as I was with the AFL and that security story.
Yep.
They're pretty resilient. Andrew Dillon down, they're a pretty resilient bunch at the AFL.
And they're a machine as well, right? They know they just have to keep rolling on. And
well, yeah. I mean, it's interesting now working for the host broadcaster, Channel 7, which I haven't for many years. And, I think there is pressure put on 7 at times. But so that's an interesting sort of comparison to when I was at Channel 9. But I reckon as long as you're fair and as long as it's not just sort of straight out picking on someone and as long as you're accurate, I think people move on. Certainly with me, I've been around for a long time. They know I'm going to still be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Ban me if you like, but, there are 18 teams. Go your hardest, seriously. I just don't mind so much anymore. I don't like falling out with people, but if I think someone's behaved badly or if I've got a story that, what, as my first editor told me, the best stories are the ones they don't want you to write.
I want to ask 2 quick questions. The first one being, you mentioned you came across a 7 this year after 20 years at 9. How did it feel to be in the middle of your own kind of transfer, I guess, story or scandal, making the big move back to 7?
It was pretty surprising. I didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would be such a big deal. I didn't think 9 would be so angry.
Yep.
I mean, because Kane Corns had left before myself.
Yeah.
And, he'd been given a very warm farewell. But I don't know why they were so angry with me. I think they felt because basically our whole show, bar Matthew Lloyd, Craig Hutchison, myself and Kane had all left.
Yeah.
So I think they saw it as a defection.
Yeah.
It was funny because, Eddie Maguire, whose company produced the show on Channel 9, spoke to me privately and said, congratulations, good on you, go your hardest, 9 should have stepped in earlier and offered you a contract, which they hadn't. They said they had, but they hadn't.
Yeah.
So, and then publicly, he sort of called us a bunch of list cloggers. It was so, I mean,
doing his job.
You never know where he's going to go.
He looks very, very hard to navigate, old Eddie. He would make a great federal parliamentarian, wouldn't he? Just in terms of like currying favour and creating like a.
Well, that was just so inconsistent, and we see each other. He's we go back a long way. I once wrote that I always had to remind myself, were we friends or enemies this week? But anyway, look, no, it was uncomfortable, Wendell, and it was legally it became a bit of an issue because 9 became litigious about it.
Yeah.
So that was really uncomfortable and a bit scary for a brief moment.
I imagine everyone in your professional and probably a lot of people in your personal life at that time as well are asking you what's happening, what's the latest, hearing whispers. How did it feel to be at the kind of the centre of it?
Uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And look, I'd made the decision at my age. I thought, just give it a go, do something different. I was really impressed by Chris Jones, the new head of Seven Sport, and what he was planning.
Yeah.
I mean, he was shaking things up. Seven haven't had a provocative, hard-hitting footy show for many. I don't know if they've ever had a really a show like that. Like they pioneered Talking Footy or On the Couch, whatever it was called initially. They've had some great shows, The Front Bar, but this is uncharted territory for them. So it was a big challenge. So I felt under pressure anyway to do a good job. And then the fact that 9 wouldn't let me be part of any of the promotion, any of the media launches, talk about what I was doing until about a week before. It was bad.
I want to ask, there's going to be some players that you've kind of grown up alongside, right? And when you say that you ended up as a copy girl straight out of school and then it wasn't long until you were in the game. So it would have been very different writing about footballers when they were your contemporaries, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Did you find yourself softening a little bit when you kind of like, now you kind of get to the age where these guys could be your sons and you can see the stupidity of a young man differently to what you did as a peer?
And then you get to the age, Clancy, where they're younger than your children.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because a person who's probably one of my best friends in footy is Jared Healy. And I think Jared and I are about the same age. He might be a year younger than me. And he played at Melbourne when I was a young footy writer and we were the same age. He was a brilliant young player. Then we were on that Aussie Rules Tour of Ireland together on the bus. Now our kids vaguely know each other. Yeah. He went to Sydney. He retired from Sydney. I wrote about him when he was at Sydney. Then he went into the media. We worked together on radio for many, many years. Yeah. And, for 10 years ago, I started saying, when are we retiring, Jared? Can we stop next year? And he'd go, we never seem to. And it's very funny, we check in on each other once in a while, watching the changes. And yes, I do. I do sometimes. No, I probably don't have any more sympathy for players. I have sympathy for players, and if I'm proud of one area of journalism, I think I started to do a lot more than anyone else, which is the mental health area. Yeah. I certainly have sympathy with players who struggle with that, and I can see that kids are just more anxious now, and they're not as resilient now as they were when
Fans
we were
are
kids.
Angrier.
I don't know why. I mean, I think social media is a part of it. There are a lot of reasons. Yeah. Maybe the drugs are different. I don't know. I just think that for a lot of reasons, life has become harder for them.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because there's more at stake because it's full time now and it's
more
their
money.
profession.
Yeah.
So I have sympathy, but I also have less sympathy when I look at some of them and go, for heaven's sake. I mean, you could be working part-time as a brickie.
Yeah.
in I don't know, in Mordialloc. I don't know why I'm saying Mordialloc because it's a lovely suburb, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And struggling to make ends meet with an alcoholic father so don't really complain to me about the stress and strain of earning 300, 400 grand a year as a minimum, as a lower average wage.
Yeah.
And okay, you get performance anxiety, I get that, but don't do it.
Yeah.
So part of me is like that. Sometimes you see genuine people you really, really feel for. And I so admire the coaches who navigate that because I know at times I'd find it really frustrating.
Have you seen different eras? Like I know when cocaine kind of hit the playing group, that would have been noticeable to you. Ecstasy, Melbourne in the late 90s was a very wild kind of place. You've got
Melbourne, the town, or the footy club?
The town.
Yeah.
They made an incredible TV series about, the ecstasy trade there in Underbelly, and footballers were mingling with these guys, and you kind of have this kind of.
Yep. And it's still going on.
Yeah.
And, you have to be very careful how you talk about it. Eras. Yeah. Well, certainly in the 80s, everyone just got on the beers and drank a lot. And then in the 90s, I was sort of having children, worked in radio, moving in and out of footy writing and doing more specialist feature writing. And then it was only at the end of the 90s I became chief football writer of the Age. And so I had to almost relearn a lot of things because I hadn't been doing it constantly. And, I was pretty shocked by some of the stuff that clubs were concealing. And it's hard but I was no longer of an age where I was seeing players out. And so,
right. So you couldn't have that kind of...
I was sort of going home to my kids, really. Not that I was going out partying with them that much in the 80s, but at times you did go out and you would see them out.
And you'd have friends who saw them out and whatever
All
else.
of that. Yeah. And then my kids saw them out. And then, one of my kids is offered drugs by one of them at a pub and you're going, oh.
What a nightmare for that player.
Bad career move.
Yeah. Now, I want to know... I also want to know about, the characters that exist in the game. You went across with the coaches there, and the ones who you worked well with, and the ones who've been difficult, and and of course the people that you are going to keep running into for the rest of your life. But with the players, has there ever been a player where you kind of look at them like it doesn't matter what they do? And I know I look at Australia's relationship with Shane Warne, for example, where he would continue to do outlandish things and very controversial things, and there'd be scandals, and we just couldn't not take him back in. And in fact, we never really even got close to Shane being a complicated figure. It was always Shane. Have there been players like that you've kind of looked at and you've said, geez, if you were anyone else, if you're any less likable, you would be banished from this game?
Yeah, it's funny because I remember a good friend of mine, Mike Sheehan, another retired, well, he's retired, I'm still not, but comparing Shane Warne in a group that I think he mentioned Wayne Carey. And I always felt Warney was hard done by because Warney's issues were mainly, let's face it, infidelity, being caught with a girl. There was the drug thing.
Dietetics,
and then he did do the weather report actually. But he was, for all his issues, I think a lot of what he did were things that were just dumb.
Yeah.
And, and then later on I met him and, one of my kids knows his daughter and he's just a lovely bloke.
Yeah.
I mean, a seriously lovely bloke in the end. And in the end, that saves you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of footballers who you thought, oh, look, they're characters and isn't it great? And then it turns out, look, they actually do one too many stupid things.
Yeah.
And a classic example of that is Jason Ackermanis.
Yeah.
Just a classic example.
Even Queenslanders will admit that.
While he was playing well, you just let him get away with that stuff. But then, nah. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Robert Di-Domenico's one, could be a bit of a thug. Then he became a great premiership player, then a Brownlow medalist. Then he became the world's worst boundary rider for Channel 7. But I think people always welcome him back and love him. I'm trying to think of ones who continue to do stupid things.
And you catch. I mean, even you would, I guess, as someone who writes about it, I can only imagine catch yourself thinking, he's just got a little. He's too slick. This one, like we kind of let him go.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I mean, there've been so many great characters, but to be honest, not so many now.
Yeah,
and people. That's why people I think love Jack Ginnivan.
Yeah.
But I go, well, why would you go to the races on the night before a grand final? Why would you go to the pub 2 nights before a final? I don't really get that. And it was like, oh, but that's Jack, and then, he doesn't turn up at a junior footy clinic and all these parents and kids turn up and he's not there. So that is really bad. Sorry, can't have that.
Warney would have shown up, rain, hail or shine.
I reckon he would have, and if he hadn't, he would have got them all round to his house a few weeks later and had them playing in his pool or something.
Yeah.
And I think Jack needs to learn that. So that's an example of someone. And then you have other ones who, Toby Green. Like I get so frustrated with Toby Green.
Yeah.
And a few weeks ago when he got suspended for that game, and it was a really important game, and I think they lost. And he's captain. Like you just can't do that, Toby. And I remember when he was caught in that punch up at Zagami's all those years ago, and his own leadership group suspended him, and then he came back and he became the All-Australian captain, and he's played so brilliantly in so many games. And a month ago, I think I smashed him for what he did, but then he did what he did last weekend, and I love him again.
Yeah.
So he's probably one who, and then you watch him give an interview and say something stupid, but he's so honest. So he's probably one who
journos would like that. That's a quality you want, someone who's just going to answer your questions.
Yeah, and my husband gets frustrated with some of his antics, and the Bulldogs loathe him, and he loathes. Won't it be great if they play each other in a final, which it looks like they might.
He's one of those guys who he looks like he enjoys being loathed by opposition teams and fans as well, I think.
Bit of that McEnroe.
Yeah.
I think in the end, don't you think our instinct, certainly as a journalist and as a public, the ones we fall in love with, we tend to there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And there's a reason I keep forgiving Toby even though he lets me down again and again because he's a brilliant player and he's clearly a good bloke. Underneath it all, he's clearly a very good person.
And that concludes part 1 of our interview with famed AFL writer Caro Wilson. She's obviously schooling Wendell and myself in the mythology and some of the soap opera-like yarns that have come out of Aussie rules over the last 40 years. An incredible witness to the growth of a game, from VFL to what it is now as the AFL to nationwide sport. She'll be back next week with part 2, and make sure you keep an eye out for that one. Now, if you're interested in the hat I'm wearing, Big in Betoota. I'm big in Betoota. All of our guests are, I guess. They come through to Betoota Talks. Caro's big in Betoota. Wendell, Errol, Clancy, Effie, we're all big in Betoota, and we believe our readers are as well. So if you'd like to pick up this, we have it in a shirt as well. You can head to Betoota'Outfitters.com. Thank you for tuning in, and stick around for next week when we drop part 2 of Caroline Wilson.